The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
So August 11th, Granbury ISD had their freshman orientation at the high school. And we got notified by several people about an LGBTQ plus booth they had up there giving flags and paraphernalia away. What about that?
Well, the first cause of concern is that there is a club that's focused on sex. You know, LGBT, you're identifying prospective members by who they're attracted to or how they identify. And the thing that concerned me the most about it was that they did not let the parents in there to see that. By the time the parents were allowed in the building to see, you know, what was going on at that freshman orientation, they had already taken down the booth and given out dozens of flags to these children, incoming freshmen.
So they had a booth, and the freshmen go in, and they walk around, and they meet people, I guess, and different teachers and whatnot. And their parents can't come in. Of course, you know, they pay the taxes, right? We all do, ad valorem taxes.
Now, I wonder why the parents weren't allowed in this time.
Well, we all wonder why, but we know why.
Yeah.
It's because you have things like, and what else are they telling the kids? Who knows?
Well, and I did have a parent reach out to me. His name's Ruben Martinez. He is father of a incoming freshman at the high school. And he said, my son will be a freshman this year. He could not believe that the club was there and handed out their stuff to the other students. He felt like it was forcing their way of life on him. I told him he could start a faith-based club, which is great. And I hear that a lot. My only reservation with that is that's ignoring the fact that we have a sex-focused club targeting 14-year-old kids that are just coming into high school.
You're sexualizing the children is what you're doing.
Yeah. And
with a club, with taxpayer money, and you have a booth there, so you're in the high school, parents aren't allowed till the end, or middle, whatever it may be. They hurry up, take the booth down, because they know it's wrong.
But the kids still have those little pride flags.
And so when they have a booth like that, and they have some kind of club, it has to be sponsored by a teacher, right?
Yeah, and we are going to be naming who that teacher is later on in the show.
So they got this club, whoever's in it, got the teacher to sponsor them to put a sexualization of children club in GISD. You know, we already have the books in the library for GISD.
The porno books, yeah.
Yes, and age-inappropriate stuff. And what in the hell is GISD doing? They keep moving farther and farther. We've had a trustee say there's no porn in the schools, yet on our last show we proved there was, and there continues to be.
Satanic cartoon porn at that.
And now we have LGBTQI plus clubs popping up. This is just complete sexualization of the kids. And it's not stopping. It's not going backwards. It's moving forward.
It's moving full steam ahead. GISD, and it pains me to say this. I went to GISD. I love public schools. I love Granbury High School and all the Granbury schools. But it pains me to say that GISD, through the inaction of the Board of Trustees and the upper level administrators, are grooming your children. There's no getting around it.
But, you know, people are going to say, you love GISD in public schools? How can you love them when you're going after them? You're so mean. You're full of hate. You're a bigot. How can you even live with yourself, Nate?
Well, you know, Adrienne Martin, the chair of the Democrat Party, just a few minutes ago called me a bigot. And if I have the Democrats calling me a bigot, first off, I wear that as a badge of honor. But to answer your question, it's holding them accountable. It's trying to save public education, because I'll tell you, if we don't turn public education around in this country and in this community, it'll go away. Parents are done putting up with this crap.
They're past done.
We are beyond done with putting up with this. And the public school system either needs to start holding themselves accountable better, or just get ready to vanish, because that is what happens if they keep down this path of degeneracy.
And, it's funny because the admin and a lot of the teachers, and we're not saying 100% admin, 100% teachers, but
By no means.
but the majority either are for this or won't stick up for the other values and get this out of the schools. So what you have is in fact, the public school system imploding on itself because they won't stand up against these teachers or these administrators, and it's time for them to leave, or public education will go, because parents won't be putting their kids in schools like this, even Granbury.
Heck no. Even just as soon as a story started to break, I saw a lot of parents say, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't put up with it anymore. Last year, it was the CRT and the glorifying the pederast and the brain pop video and comparing the BLM riots to, the civil rights stuff. There's all this insanity going on in public schools. And believe me, this is a plea to GISD. Stop, turn around, and go back to the normalcy that this community wants.
But see, I don't think they want to. I think they want to bury their heads. They want to have the citizens out of this. They don't want anybody poking their nose into public education.
Which is why they excluded the parents.
Exactly. And out of all the trustees, what I've seen on social media is you had one trustee, Melanie Graff, that put out a statement.
Thank God
Yes.
we have Melanie on that school board, because she is the lone voice of reason. And unfortunately, because she doesn't toe the line for the rest of the trustees, they always try to make her out to be a villain. But she is doing God's work up there.
And she's the only one at this point. And the others may say, well, I don't want porn in the libraries, and I don't want this going on with the clubs. But they won't say anything publicly. They'll put their head in the sand, and they'll go, oh, we better have a policy. Maybe in 3 or 4 years we can get a policy done and maybe get this stuff out of the schools, right?
The only thing that they will do to try to put on this facade that they're actually responding to these major issues is they will start to gaslight the people that ask them. Oh, we can't do anything because we might get sued. We can't do anything because of blah blah blah, the attorneys or whatever, or this policy. I'm tired of the excuses. We are done hearing excuses in GISD, and we need some concrete results, and we need them fast, because if they keep this up, it's not going to be long before we have a BDSM club for kids or a furry club for kids or whatever. And it's not making fun of the kids by going after this stuff. It's holding the administration and the school board of trustees accountable, because so far, save for Melanie Graft and a few other, there are a couple good upper level administrators, but most of them are failing this district either through the actions they're taking or their silence, because them being silent is them being complicit.
It is very complicit. And you have the superintendent who works at the pleasure of the trustees. So the trustees get together and pretty much say, this is what we expect of our superintendent. So if there's a communication break between the trustees and the superintendent, then that's a problem. But if they're all on board for the same thing, then we need to get rid of all the trustees except for Melanie.
And to Dr. Glenn's credit, he started off we go back to the book issue before we were dealing with gay clubs. When that book issue surfaced, he was saying and doing the right things. He said, look, there are two genders. There's no reason this stuff needs to be in our libraries. This is a conservative community, and we're going to serve in that fashion. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that a majority of the trustees got with them and said, if you don't start backpedaling that, we're going to kick you out of here.
Well, and there you go. Then we have a trustee problem.
Yeah. I think all of these problems, these social issues that are infecting public education, this indoctrination that's going on, and the normalization of abnormal behavior that's going on in GISD is a direct result of a lack of leadership on that board of trustees. And fortunately, we have 3 seats coming up in November. The filing period's open right now, and I can guarantee if we get some good conservatives running, this will be a very exciting campaign season.
And the ammunition doesn't stop. I mean, you have the books, you have the bond, you have this now, the club. And what are these trustees doing? And we go back to Melanie Graff, and let me read the statement that Melanie Graff put out on social media. And it says, "School is for education, not sexualizing children. A teacher-sponsored LGBT plus club handed out pride flags to incoming high school students during last night's freshman orientation. Parents were prohibited from entering until most of the event was over. I spoke to the superintendent and will be digging deeper, always keeping the community informed. I'm sure my colleagues on the board will be upset with me for informing the community, but I work for you, the people." So it's about time we've got Melanie Graff that puts out a statement, the only one so far that we know of, even with the books and whatnot. Nobody's saying a word except for Melanie Graff.
Well, and Courtney Gore said that there is no porn in the library, but yeah, Melanie's the only one on our side, and I do have to praise Melanie for having the strength and the courage to put this out, because like she said in there, the colleagues that are on the board with her, their approach to governing Granbury ISD is you try to do everything outside the purview of the people. And this is the type of stuff we talk about when we say we want candidates with transparency. Melanie is a shining example of what that looks like right now.
Well, you look at the platform. Don't they have anything in there about it?
Yeah, in the platform, the number 4 legislative priority from the Texas GOP is to repeal the obscenity exemption, which allows children access to harmful, explicit, or pornographic materials. There's the porn in the library. And which also allows sexual performance by a child. In addition, prohibit teaching, exposure, and or discussion of sexual materials, including mechanics, feelings, orientation, or gender identity and issues, and prohibit the use or provision of related books and other materials using criminal, civil, or other enforcement measures. In a nutshell, that says get the porn out of the libraries and the age-appropriate stuff and the gay clubs. It says we shouldn't be talking sexual orientation with children, and that should be common sense, and I think a lot of our viewers believe that's common sense. School is not the place to glorify abnormal behavior and sinful behavior.
Not only glorify it, but celebrate it and actually have other students celebrate it or make them feel like they're wrong for believing in what they do.
And I was thinking about this on the way here to the studio. You have to tolerate it, and then you have to accept it, and then you have to glorify it, and then you have to participate. TAGP. Tolerate, accept, glorify, participate. Granbury ISD is at the participation level, because ever since the backlash for this started, now they're calling the LGBT plus club the Gay Straight Alliance. So, they want your kids to participate in this. And it's up to parents to voice their opinions, and it's up to the voters to correct this issue at the voting booth.
And it goes back to, this is a public school. This isn't some, offshoot, your own time, go do whatever you want afterwards. This is tax dollars being spent for these books, for these clubs and all this stuff. Just get down to teaching. Just get down to teaching the basic material and keep the sexualization out of the schools, but they can't. And you read the Republican Party platform and one of the principles and how the Republican Party feels. Well, those are the real Republicans. And people get upset when you say real Republicans or Republicans, but we'll have Republicans talk on our Facebook page, so-called Republicans.
They identify as Republicans.
Yeah. And it's more of a spiritual issue versus a secular issue. And the Republicans, the conservatives, the whatever you want to call it, the Christians, they're losing. And every time you step up, you're going to get smacked down by the secular world or the secular people who, frankly, don't have the morals and they want to go the opposite way. So we talked earlier about the teacher that sponsored this. Mm-hmm. And you did some digging and looked around, and you found out who sponsored this. Okay,
so I was told by a member of the school district, and fortunately I have several friends and acquaintances that are teachers and administrators and these other things. The teacher that sponsored this club is a woman named Edie Alderson. She teaches at the high school, and she is an English teacher. And I reached out to her for a comment. She blocked me, so I don't have a comment of hers to justify any of this stuff. But I did find a comment of hers from several years ago speaking on this issue there on her Facebook page. And it says, "Someday, even in Texas, we will outnumber the bigots. You would believe how many of my students through the years are open and tolerant to all. Definitely the majority. My children will be in that majority. It's getting better." And I know a few teachers, and a lot of times they refer to their students as their children. Here she is 9 years ago talking about indoctrinating students into the homosexual lifestyle.
And there you go with the bigot. So if you don't conform to the LGBTQ plus whatever,
Or tolerate or accept.
right? So you throw all it in, you're a bigot. Not only you're a bigot, but you should be shamed.
Oh, yeah.
Not only should you be shamed, you shouldn't have one word to say against this because of how hateful you are. When in fact, it's total opposite. This is a public run school, which they're losing kids left and right, and they're losing teachers. And the big theme is, it's because of all this politics that are involved. No, you get the real graphs and the real, what's going on. And it's not. It's because of the way the kids are nowadays. It's because of the parents and the toleration that's going on. And this needs to change. And you said, my children will be in that majority. And they do talk, say, hey, my kids, my children.
That's how they talk.
But when in fact, I know what they mean, but that's just one more step of taking your kids into the government realm and saying, your kids are ours from pre-K all the way up. And if you don't like it, tough. We're going to change them over your morals and principles as parents, and you can forget about it because our kids are ours.
And that is exactly what's happening, not just in GISD, but across this country. It's like parental rights are under attack. Look at GISD just the other day. They wouldn't allow parents into the basically meet the teacher orientation deal thing that they were having for the freshman students. They wouldn't allow parents in until the very end after most of it was cleaned up. And come to find out, they did the same thing at GMS. It's like they are trying to separate, whether or not they realize it, they're trying to separate parents from those kids.
So I wonder whose idea that was. Is this a normal thing? Has been going on for years? And if so, who started it? Just because we do it every year doesn't mean that it's right.
Doesn't make it right.
I would think that you would want the parents and the parents' children in there together for the same amount of time to see what is going on and where their kids are going to be for 6 to 8 hours a day, right?
Yeah, you're talking 40 hours a week plus extracurriculars. Going to school for a child is basically a full-time
Their
job.
life.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what they're doing during the school year. And to think, it's funny because for years they said we need more parental involvement. The reason we have all these issues is because not enough parents are involved. COVID happened and parents started getting involved. And thank you to the parents that are getting involved the way we are, because we have to do that to save public education. But now that all the parents are getting involved, they're getting in a tizzy because now they're under scrutiny because people see the crazy crap that's going on at our own schools.
I keep going back to Melanie Graff, the trustee, the lone trustee that's for the people, and the others say they are, but if they're not going to stand, they're not going to be for the people. So, go back to Melanie Graff, schools for education, not sexualizing, children. And people get so upset with that, not all, but a lot of people get upset.
The libs.
Yeah, the libs, some Christians, because it's not, considered loving in their minds. And it's like, there's the ways of this world, and then there's not. And people are going to have to get over this, and they're going to have to, we're going to have to knuckle down if we need to get, for us to get this out of public schools once and for all. And when you do that, if you do that, you will have students and kids flocking to public school. and they will have all the average daily attendance, all the money they need, but they're doing the total opposite, and they're pushing parents and students out of public education and teachers at an alarming rate.
Yeah, they really are. And, sexualizing kids, the way Melanie talked about it, falls under indoctrination. And that's another thing I really respect about Melanie is that when she ran, her little slogan was education, not indoctrination. Not indoctrination to Common Core stuff, not indoctrination to anti-white, supposedly anti-racist teachings, and now not indoctrination to sinful and abnormal lifestyles with the LGBT stuff. So props to her,
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a strong person to stand like that, and she has really shown a lot of courage under fire. And believe me, they are going after her hard.
Oh, I bet. And same with the parents and same with the kids. You're right. It takes somebody with moral fortitude to stand up and to put up with these people that constantly go after them, the intolerant group that does, on these issues. And, we've got 3 positions that are opening up, so people can run for the trustees.
And whoever decides to run for those, please, if you do not have the fortitude to stand in the gap the way that Melanie Graft has done, please don't run. We have to have conservative fighters. We don't have a choice. Like I said, I am all for public education. It's in the Texas Constitution. I graduated GHS. I am all for trying to save public education. But unless we elect 3 conservative fighters to the Granbury Independent School District this year, you can probably kiss it goodbye.
We don't need lukewarm people running. We need people that will go in there and do the things like Melanie Graff.
And this all really falls under the umbrella of the communist takeover of the United States. And I know people think that sounds crazy, but when you look at the results of what has happened to public education through the universities and through K through 12, since, the Cold War is really when all this stuff started, when you look at that, you see how clearly the communists have been operating and how effectively they've been operating.
So thanks to the Babylon Bee, you got a meme that they have out there, and it kind of shows what GISDs come, with this club and everything. But it says, studies show kids who are homeschooled could miss out on an opportunity to be gay and communist.
Look at it. We have Christians around here that are trying to make excuses for having a gay club at a public school, a gay club for kids. That's what that is. That LGBT club, that is a gay club for kids. One could argue that it's a gay sex club for kids. Now, I'm not saying that, but I've heard people say it.
Well, then that starts with your grooming process, and that starts with whoever, sponsored this. And you go back 9 years into that background, and this is what you get. You get some very patient people that are trying to go in and sexualize your kids through books, through clubs, through you name it, and we're still going to have the people out in the public sitting here going, so what? I don't care. They see that on TV. They see that everywhere else, but not at public schools. And I keep saying, if public schools police themselves and took this crap out of the schools, they'd have more kids than they can handle.
And they always use the excuse of, well, we don't want to get sued. The Texas Education Agency, as it relates to the book specifically, it came out and said, school districts, y'all can basically do whatever the heck you want. You can rewrite your policies. You can have your superintendent get the smut out. Whatever you need to do that's right for your district, go ahead and do that. And our district, save for Melanie Graft, has been too stubborn, too scared, and too feckless to do it themselves. And that's, again, why we have to have 3 solid conservatives.
And too slow.
10 months.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, and I keep saying this to people, is the porn's in there, the material's in there, and it gets to a point where if it's in there, it's sexually explicit, and it's pornography, then you should be charged with it. If you're a librarian, if you're a trustee, and you know about it, you're culpable to that, and it needs to come a point in time where we put a policy in place, a year, 10 months, whatever it is. It takes another year. They're going to send kids back to school, put the books back in there, and then we're going to decide later. No, that's a criminal offense in my mind.
It sounds like one to me too, and the communists, and I do still call them communists, they don't want that stuff out of the schools. They want to destroy the nuclear family. They want to desensitize all these kids, and they want to raise a generation or generations of docile, obedient, passive drones to do the jobs that machines haven't learned to do yet until they really start implementing population control.
But you know what? Then you see all these pictures of the trustees going around, slapping people on the back, having a grand old time with the kids, getting affirmation from the kids. And what I really need from a trustee is, if you want to do that, that's fine. You want to be part of the school and part of what's going on. I get it. But do your job. And the three that are up for re-election, in my opinion, they haven't done their job and they failed.
And last year I would have just said two of them, because Paula McDonald, to her credit, she did put on that anti-CRT training, but in the last year, she has just gone along to get along. And one more thing, and this is a very little known fact, I hadn't talked about it until now, but before they kicked me off the bond steering committee, because I didn't buy into all their crap, Paula, who's a realtor, appointed her own husband to serve on that bond steering committee. If that's not a case of nepotism or, whatever you want to call it, conflict of interest, I don't know what is. And that's not the only instance. Two of the administrators we've hired recently are spouses of assistant superintendents. So it's like we have spouses of assistant superintendents that just filled a couple spots to be department heads. If that's not nepotism, I don't know what is. There's so much reform, and honestly, I know a lot of the teachers are upset about that because some good candidates got passed up, and everyone's like, well, what do you expect? Their spouse is the number 2 or the number 3 in the district, again, well, and I hate coming down so hard on GISD, but I cannot in good conscience sit by and not say anything anymore, because if they don't fix what's going on, public education will go away, and that conspiracy theory that people like us are trying to destroy it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, not because of what we do, but because of their lack of action.
And that just smacks of, you can talk about nepotism and things like that. We've got some information requests coming back here pretty soon on some of those positions to see who put in and things like that. But that's mainly used for a reward system, let's say, for going out and being a big cheerleader for the bond or whatever. So we're going to have to look into that a little bit deeper. And there are, names of people that match that I think should be taken a different look at. And hey, if they're the best, the most qualified, they put in for the system and they went through the process, then that's another thing. But if they're just handpicked because of their cheerleading abilities and they were for what needed to be done in their eyes at the time,
and they're married to an assistant superintendent,
then that's wrong.
I mean, I'm just saying, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably not a goose.
So we're looking into that. We're looking at some other things. So that'll be on a upcoming show here in the future. But getting back to the club, let's see what goes on from here. And, who knows where this will go. Just something else that the trustees have to deal with, less than 90 days before their elections.
Well, and it's funny because the trustees will either double down and start gaslighting everybody and say, we can't disband this club because it's already started, or attorneys or whatever. Or there's a remote chance that they do the right thing here and shut this down. But with history as an indicator, that's not going to happen. But if they do, it's because we told them to.
Yeah, and that's the real story, right? When you see that, the real story is... Yeah.
What a joke.
Yeah, let me check my figures and get with Emmett. But my real story means... Yeah. So, this is public education at GISD. And I see that a lot. I see some good things coming out of that. But when they say this is public education at GISD, this is public education at GISD and what is going on in your local school district.